We are on the cusp of a whole new era of hypercar, regulations that hark back to the GT1 era at Le Mans in the 90s. Back in the day, we had the 911 GT1, the CLK GTR and the Nissan R390 to name a few, but nowadays we're going to have the Toyota GR Supersport, the Aston Martin Valkyrie, although the jury's out on that one these days. Apparently Bicolies are building something, and there's an underdog that I think deserves more of the limelight, a true privateer that is more than happy to take on the big boys. Check this beauty out. This is the Glickenhaus SCG-007, a hypercar that's currently in development and will be competing for the overall win at the next 24 Hours of Le Mans. Scuderia Cameron Glickenhaus is an American car company that builds both road and racing cars and actually specialises in GT3 machines. And when the 007 hypercar was announced, it was one hell of a package. An American hypercar that looks like this and powered by a 750 horsepower engine from the coolest brand on the planet, Alfa Romeo. Actually, the renders are all in these colours because of that connection to Alfa Romeo, supposedly. The plan was this: Glickenhaus would design the 007, chassis supplier Podium Advanced Technologies in Italy would manufacture the car, and Alfa would supply an engine. And not just any engine. They were going to take the Ferrari 488's twin-turbo V8, slice 2 cylinders off it, and make a twin-turbo V6. In a similar way to how Alfa took the Ferrari California V8 and developed it into the Giulia Super Saloons V6, Glickenhaus would take to Le Mans with a 750 horsepower, 3-litre twin-turbo V6 with Alfa Romeo badges on the cylinder heads. Imagine this car tearing past you down the Mulsanne Straight. That red livery, quad exhaust, a roof scoop, a massive rear wing that looked like the Toyota GT1, one of the most sculpted rear ends I've ever seen, and an Alfa Romeo twin-turbo soundtrack. It would win over fans immediately. But sadly, that car-engine combination is not to be, something that Glickenhaus blames on Aston Martin. Basically, Aston didn't agree with the original hypercar regulations set out by the FIA. They thought that the maximum engine power output was simply too low for the Valkyrie to compete, seeing as their engine could develop up to 1000 horsepower. To not lose Aston from Le Mans, the FIA decided to change the regulations. They decided to up the maximum power output to 850 horsepower to keep Aston happy, and that is where the Alfa Romeo engine deal fell apart. You see, Alfa had to tell Glickenhaus that the V6 they were developing couldn't handle that higher power output at the length of time that they could confidently finish an endurance racing. Cars are normally tested for 30 hours flat out in preparation for the 24-hour race, and the Alfa engineers didn't back their engine to last for that long at that higher power output. So sadly, the 007 will no longer be an Alfa Romeo-powered hypercar, and that is such a shame. Although, to be honest, the engine that they've replaced it with is equally, if not more, impressive. The next move for Glickenhaus was to contact the engine geniuses at a French firm called People Moteur. Now, if you haven't heard of these guys, they developed the incredibly successful 4-cylinder engine for the Hyundai i20 WRC cars. Glickenhaus came to them and asked them if they could build them a Le Mans engine. So, what did they do? Well, they took 2 of the single-turbo 4-cylinder engines, joined them onto a common crank to form a WRC twin-turbo V8. This thing is suddenly good for 870 horsepower, and with a flat plane crank, it's going to sound amazing under full throttle. Another cool thing is that Glickenhaus are happy to make this engine available to anyone that wants it. They want to make entering the hypercar class as cheap as possible, so they're more than happy to share this awesome piece of kit. But now comes the heartbreaking bit, and sadly, it includes Aston Martin again. Aston Martin have not been in a good financial position recently, so much so that they've had to postpone and potentially cancel their Valkyrie racing program. That has left the hypercar field looking pretty sparse, so the FIA has partnered up with IMSA to bring the American Daytona prototypes over to compete at Le Mans in the shape of a new car called an LMDH, which stands for Le Mans Daytona Hybrid. In letting these Daytona prototypes compete with the hypercars, the FIA has had to decrease the maximum power limit to lower than the original regs. The number is now 670 horsepower. Suddenly, Glickenhaus could have kept with the Alfa V6. It could have comfortably created that amount of power. All because of ASTON dipping in and then dipping out of their hypercar racing program. We've lost an Alfa powered car at the 24 hours. It's fair to say Glickenhaus were not happy about being let down by ASTON, so much so that they posted this meme saying, "Some people piss their pants at the gates of hell, while some of us don't back down." Strong words. But let's not think little of this new WRC based V8. I can't wait to hear this thing fire up for the first time, and at this new much lower power level it should be mega under stress, which should make it very reliable for an endurance race. I think we should really get behind this car, so if you haven't fallen in love with it already, I've amassed a list of 3 reasons why you should support this car when it eventually takes to the track. Number 1, it is a massive underdog. As things stand, the only team that Glickenhaus are 100% competing against are Toyota with the GR Supersport, and that thing takes tech from the company's current LMP1 car. If the Americans come over with their Daytona prototypes, Glickenhaus will be competing against R&D budgets that massively outweigh their own. They are building their own car as a proper privateer. They are a tiny company compared to their competitors, and to be honest, who doesn't like an underdog? Saying that, Glickenhaus is no stranger to a 24-hour race. They've competed at 8 Nürburgring 24-hour races, amassing 5 GT3 class victories. Not bad. Number 2, it has a cool as fuck engine, but to be honest, I've spoken about that enough, so let's move on. Number 3, the transparency of the company. Never have I seen the development process of a supercar or hypercar being so open and out there on the internet. If you look at Glickenhaus's Instagram feed, it is full of essentially daily updates on the car. They show CAD designs, renders, wind tunnel pictures, engine updates, anything that's happened with the car, they're reporting on it as soon as it happens. That is so refreshing compared to most other companies that keep all that kind of stuff incredibly secret. You look at what Toyota are doing with the GR Supersport or the Aston Martin Valkyrie, you hear the odd bit every few months, little updates here and there, while Glickenhaus are happy to bare all and tell you exactly what's going on. Everything is just so honest, and I think we should support that. The SEG 007 was supposed to make its track debut in September 2020, but the whole global situation right now has put that to bed. It looks like we'll see this car moving in January 2021 to kick off the World Endurance Championship season, and the car will also be sold to customers to both compete in races and also as road cars. It has been 50 years since an American car won overall at Le Mans, so maybe this car can take over from where the Ford GT40 left off. You may have noticed I'm wearing some new merch. This is a Hey Bim t-shirt, and if you want one of these, there's a link in the description below. Click it and get yourself one of these. This was sent to me personally by James May. It's an incredibly cool t-shirt. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to Drive Tribe.